The morning I watched Patricia Anderson from the Meadowbrook Estates HOA board standing in the middle of County Road 47 with her phone pressed to her ear. I knew my day was about to get interesting in the worst possible way. I had been up since 4 in the morning, coordinating snow removal across 3 townships in Oakland County, Michigan. The February blizzard had dumped nearly 2 feet of snow overnight, and as the county road commissioner, it was my job to make sure every county road was passable by morning rush hour. I was behind the controls of my personal excavator, a Catapult 320 that I had purchased specifically for heavy snow removal work. The county equipment was stretched thin across the district, and I had learned years ago that having my own machinery meant I could jump in wherever we were short on resources. Patricia stood there in her designer puffer coat, the white one that probably cost more than most people's monthly mortgage payments. Her perfectly highlighted blonde hair barely moving in the wind thanks to what I assumed was an entire can of hairspray. She was gesturing wildly at me, her face twisted in that particular expression of righteous indignation that I had come to associate with HOA board presidents who believed they ruled small kingdoms rather than neighborhood associations. I killed the engine and climbed down from the cab, my boots crunching in the freshly cleared snow. I had been working on clearing the massive snowdrift that had formed at the intersection of County Road 47 and Meadowbrook Drive, right where the entrance to the Meadowbrook Estates subdivision met the county road. The drift was easily 6 feet high and blocking the main access point for the subdivision's 200 homes. "Excuse me," Patricia called out, marching toward me with her phone still in hand. "I have called the police. You are operating heavy machinery on private property without permission from the homeowners association." I pulled off my work gloves and looked at her. "Madam, I'm clearing County Road 47, which is a public road maintained by Oakland County. The snowdrift was blocking the intersection, which is a safety hazard." "That intersection is part of our community," she insisted, her voice rising to that particular pitch that suggested she was used to getting her way through sheer volume and persistence. "You cannot just bring in this massive piece of equipment and start tearing up the area without proper approval from the HOA board. We have landscaping concerns, underground sprinkler systems, and aesthetic standards that must be maintained." I rubbed my cold face with my equally cold hand and tried to summon patience I did not feel after 20 hours of continuous work. The county road right-of-way extends 15 feet from the center line on each side. Everything I cleared is within that right-of-way. I haven't touched any HOA property. "I don't care about your supposed right-of-way," Patricia said, and I noticed she had that look in her eyes that told me reason was not going to win this battle. "You should have contacted the HOA board before bringing this monstrosity into our neighborhood. We have rules about commercial vehicles, about noise ordinances, and about unauthorized construction activity. This isn't construction activity. This is emergency snow removal so your residents can actually get to work this morning," I said, pointing at the mountain of snow I had just moved. "That drift was completely blocking the intersection. Nobody could get in or out of your subdivision." Patricia crossed her arms. "Several of our residents have 4-wheel drive vehicles. They were managing just fine." I stared at her. "Madam, it's not about whether someone can drive over a snow pile. It's about safe traffic flow, visibility at intersections, and ensuring emergency vehicles can access the area. What happens if someone has a heart attack in your subdivision and an ambulance can't get through because there's a 6-foot wall of snow blocking the entrance? That's a hypothetical situation," she dismissed with a wave of her hand. What's real is that you are here, operating equipment without permission, and disturbing our residents at the crack of dawn with your noise. It was 7:30 in the morning, hardly the crack of dawn, but I decided not to point that out. Instead, I pulled out my wallet and extracted one of my business cards. My name is Xavier Barrett. I'm the Oakland County Road Commissioner. This is my direct line. If you have concerns about county road maintenance, you can call my office. She took the card, glanced at it, and then actually laughed. It was not a pleasant sound. I don't care if you're the governor. You still need HOA approval to work in our area. This card doesn't give you permission to ignore our community standards. Before I could respond, a Troy Police Department cruiser pulled up, lights flashing. Officer Mike Chen stepped out, someone I knew from various community meetings and emergency response coordination sessions. He took one look at the situation, at me standing there in my county work gear, at Patricia in her designer coat, and at the excavator with the county seal still visible on the side despite the snow covering it, and I saw him suppress a sigh. "Morning, Commissioner Barrett," Mike said, nodding at me. Then he turned to Patricia. "Madam, you called about unauthorized construction." "Yes, officer," Patricia said, her voice dripping with vindication. "This man has brought in heavy equipment and is tearing up our neighborhood entrance without any permission from the HOA board. We have strict rules about this sort of thing." Mike looked at the cleared intersection, at the massive snowdrift I had moved, and then back at Patricia. "Madam, Commissioner Barrett is clearing the county road. That's his job. There's no violation here." "He's working on HOA property," Patricia insisted. "The entrance to our subdivision is maintained by our association. We pay dues specifically to handle this sort of thing." Mike walked over to the area I had cleared and looked around carefully. Then he pulled out his phone and appeared to be checking something. "Madam, according to the county records I'm looking at, this entire area is within the county road right-of-way. The HOA property line starts back there." He pointed to a spot about 15 feet from where we were standing, where that subdivision entrance sign is located. Patricia's face was turning an interesting shade of red. "That can't be right. We own the entrance to our subdivision." "You own the sign and the landscaping around it," Mike explained patiently. "But the actual road surface and the area immediately around it where it connects to the county road is county property. It's standard for any subdivision that connects to a county-maintained road." "This is ridiculous," Patricia said. "I want to file a formal complaint. He woke up half the neighborhood with his noise." "There's no noise ordinance violation for emergency snow removal operations," Mike said. "And even if there were, county road maintenance is exempt from local noise ordinances when it comes to emergency operations." I had been content to let Mike handle it, but Patricia was not done. She pulled out her phone and started recording. "I'm documenting this harassment by county officials. This is going to the County Board of Commissioners. I have connections, and I will make sure this abuse of power is addressed." Mike shook his head. "Madam, I need you to step back onto the sidewalk. You're standing in the middle of an active county road, which is actually a safety violation." "I'm documenting a crime," Patricia protested. "The only potential violation I see is you obstructing a county road," Mike said, his patience clearly wearing thin. "Now please, step back onto the sidewalk before I have to issue you a citation." Patricia moved, but her face suggested this was far from over. She stopped recording and started typing furiously on her phone. "The HOA board will hear about this. We'll be filing official complaints with the county, with the township, and with whoever else we need to contact." This kind of high-handed behavior from county employees is unacceptable. I climbed back into the excavator. "Officer Chen, I need to finish this section and then move on to County Road 52. We've got reports of another major drift blocking traffic there." "Go ahead, Commissioner," Mike said. "I'll make sure the area stays clear." I fired up the excavator and got back to work, aware that Patricia was still standing there on the sidewalk, phone in hand, presumably calling other HOA board members to report this grave injustice. Mike stayed for another 10 minutes, ensuring that Patricia did not try to block me again, and then headed out to respond to actual emergencies. By the time I finished clearing the intersection and the surrounding area, a small crowd had gathered. Some of the Meadowbrook Estates residents had come out to see what all the commotion was about. Most of them waved gratefully when they saw the cleared road. A few even called out thanks. But Patricia had been joined by 2 other women, both around her age, both with that same expression of offended authority. I shut down the excavator and climbed down one more time. I needed to do a final inspection of the work to make sure I had not accidentally damaged any underground utilities or created any drainage problems with the snow placement. One of the women with Patricia approached me immediately. She was wearing a bright purple coat and had the kind of severe haircut that suggested she asked to speak to managers on a regular basis. "I'm Deborah Fletcher, HOA Treasurer. Patricia has informed me that you've been conducting unauthorized work in our community. I need to see your permits and insurance documentation immediately." I was tired, cold, and had 14 more hours of work ahead of me. "Madam, as I explained to Mrs. Anderson, I don't need HOA permission to maintain county roads. I have all the necessary county authorizations, and the county carries comprehensive liability insurance for all road maintenance operations." "That's not good enough," Deborah said. "Our HOA covenants require anyone doing work within the subdivision to provide proof of insurance that specifically names the Meadowbrook Estates HOA as an additional insured party. Without that, you're in violation of our rules." "Your rules don't apply to county road maintenance," I said, trying to keep my voice level. "The county has sovereign immunity for essential services like road maintenance. Your HOA doesn't have jurisdiction over county operations." The third woman, who had been hanging back, finally spoke up. She was shorter than the other 2, with glasses and a more uncertain expression. "Are you sure you're supposed to be working here? Patricia said you might be from one of those scam contractors who go around after storms trying to overcharge people." I looked at her in disbelief. "I'm the county road commissioner. I gave Mrs. Anderson my business card with my direct office number. You can call and verify my identity if you want." Patricia jumped back in. "Anyone can print a business card. I want to see your county identification badge." I pulled out my wallet again and showed them my county employee ID badge, complete with photo, name, title, and the county seal. All 3 women peered at it suspiciously, as if they were examining a potentially counterfeit bill. "This could be fake," Deborah said. I pulled out my phone and called my office. My assistant, Rachel Morrison, answered on the second ring. "Oakland County Road Commission, Commissioner Barrett's office." "Rachel, it's Xavier. I'm at the intersection of County Road 47 and Meadowbrook Drive. I've got some HOA board members here who want verification of my identity. Can you confirm for them?" I put the phone on speaker. Rachel's voice came through clearly. "This is Rachel Morrison, Administrative Assistant to County Road Commissioner Xavier Barrett. Commissioner Barrett is authorized to conduct all necessary road maintenance operations throughout Oakland County. How can I help you?" The 3 women exchanged glances. Patricia took the lead. "This is Patricia Anderson, President of the Meadowbrook Estates HOA Board." Your commissioner has been conducting work in our subdivision without proper authorization from our board." There was a pause, and I could practically hear Rachel choosing her words carefully. "Madam, the county road commissioner doesn't require authorization from homeowners associations to maintain county roads and county right-of-ways. If you have concerns about county road maintenance, you can file a formal complaint with the county, but I can assure you that Commissioner Barrett has full authority to perform the work he's doing." "We'll see about that," Patricia said. "I'm calling the county executive's office right now." "You're welcome to do that," Rachel said. "The county executive's office hours begin at 8:30. Would you like me to provide you with that number?" Patricia ended the call without responding and immediately started dialing another number. I thanked Rachel and hung up. "I need to get moving," I told the women. "I have a dozen more locations to clear before the afternoon." "You're not going anywhere until we get this sorted out," Deborah said, actually stepping in front of my excavator. Officer Chen's cruiser pulled back into the area. He must have been monitoring the situation because he looked distinctly unhappy. "Ladies, I need you to step away from the county equipment. If you interfere with county road maintenance operations, I can arrest you for obstruction." "This is harassment," Patricia said, but she and the others moved back. I climbed back into the excavator, started it up, and carefully maneuvered it onto the trailer I had brought. It took about 15 minutes to secure everything properly, and the 3 HOA board members watched the entire process like hawks, presumably looking for some violation they could report. As I was finishing the tie-downs, a silver Mercedes pulled up, and a man in an expensive suit got out. He looked to be in his late 50s, with the kind of tan that comes from winter vacations in warm climates rather than outdoor work. "Commissioner Barrett," he called out. I climbed down from the trailer. "That's me. Gerald Hampton, HOA attorney for Meadowbrook Estates. I've been informed that you conducted unauthorized work within the subdivision this morning." I was really getting tired of explaining this. "I cleared a county road and county right-of-way. No HOA authorization required." Gerald pulled out a tablet and brought up what looked like a property survey. "According to our records, the entrance area to Meadowbrook Estates is private property maintained by the HOA. You've exceeded the county right-of-way and worked on HOA property without permission." I looked at his survey, then pulled out my own phone and brought up the official county engineering survey for County Road 47. According to the official county records, which supersede any private surveys, the county right-of-way extends to here. I pointed at the screen, then gestured to the physical location, which is exactly where I stopped working. Gerald studied both surveys. To his credit, he actually seemed to be trying to understand the situation rather than just looking for a fight. "These surveys show different boundaries. Your survey is probably based on the original subdivision plat from whenever Meadowbrook Estates was developed," I explained. "But county roads sometimes have wider right-of-ways than what shows on subdivision plats, especially at intersections. The county right-of-way takes precedence because it's a matter of public safety and utility access." "I'll need to verify this with the county surveyor's office," Gerald said. "You're welcome to do that," I replied. "The county surveyor's office opens at 8:30, same building as my office, 2 floors down." Patricia was not satisfied with Gerald's reasonable approach. "I don't care about surveys. He damaged our property and disturbed our residents and ignored our authority. The HOA board has rules and everyone has to follow them, including county employees." Gerald held up a hand. "Patricia, if the county right-of-way is where Commissioner Barrett says it is, then the HOA doesn't have jurisdiction over his work." "Then our survey is wrong," Deborah demanded. I don't know yet, Gerald said. That's what I need to verify. But I can tell you that county right-of-way laws are pretty clear. If this is county property, the HOA rules don't apply. Patricia looked like she wanted to explode. This is exactly the kind of government overreach that the HOA was created to prevent. We can't just have county employees coming in and doing whatever they want whenever they want. When it comes to emergency snow removal on county roads, yes, they actually can, Gerald said. He turned to me. Commissioner Barrett, I apologize for any confusion. I'll verify the survey information and get back to the board. If you were working within the county right-of-way, then obviously you were within your authority. Appreciate it, I said. I was already behind schedule and needed to get moving. Patricia was not done. Gerald, we pay you to protect the HOA's interests, not side with the county. I'm paid to provide legal advice, Patricia, Gerald said with a patience that suggested he had this conversation regularly. And my advice is that if the county is maintaining county property, we don't have a legal leg to stand on. Fighting this would be a waste of HOA funds. I left them arguing and headed to my truck. I still had County Road 52 to deal with, plus reports of ice problems on County Road 38 and a potential road closure on County Road 61, where a tree had come down across the road. The Meadowbrook Estates situation was annoying, but seemed to be resolving itself. I was wrong about that. 3 days later, I walked into my office at the Oakland County Complex in Waterford to find a stack of formal complaints on my desk. Rachel looked apologetic as she pointed at them. The Meadowbrook Estates HOA has filed complaints with the county executive's office, the Board of Commissioners, the township supervisor, and apparently they also sent copies to the Michigan Department of Transportation, even though MDOT has nothing to do with county roads, she said. They're claiming you damaged HOA property, violated noise ordinances, failed to obtain proper permits, and operated equipment in a reckless manner that endangered residents. I picked up the top complaint and started reading. It was written in that particular style of bureaucratic outrage that suggested Patricia had either gotten help from Gerald the attorney or had simply watched too many legal dramas on television. The complaint alleged that I had willfully and recklessly operated heavy machinery within the Meadowbrook Estates subdivision without authorization, proper permits, or regard for the safety of residents. It went on to claim that I had damaged underground sprinkler systems, destroyed landscaping, created dangerous snow piles that blocked visibility, and violated multiple township ordinances regarding noise, commercial vehicles, and construction activities. The complaint demanded that I be disciplined, that the county pay for all damages, and that the county commit to consulting with the HOA board before conducting any future maintenance work in the area. This is ridiculous, I muttered. I didn't touch any sprinkler systems. There aren't any sprinkler systems in the county right-of-way, and the snow piles I created are standard for intersection clearing. They're positioned specifically to maintain visibility. I know, Rachel said, but you know how this works. The complaints have been filed, so they have to be investigated. The county executive, Margaret Willis, called me into her office that afternoon. Margaret was a no-nonsense administrator in her early 60s who had been county executive for 12 years. She had my back on most things, but she also had to deal with political realities. Xavier, talk to me about Meadowbrook Estates, she said, gesturing for me to sit down. I walked her through the entire situation, from the emergency snow clearing to Patricia's interference to the various confrontations with HOA board members. Margaret listened without interrupting, occasionally making notes on her tablet. You have documentation of the work you did?" She asked when I finished. "Full documentation," I confirmed. "GPS logs from the excavator showing exactly where I worked, photos I took before and after for our records, and the emergency operations logs showing that this was part of coordinated storm response across the county." "And you're certain you stayed within the county right of way?" "Positive. I pulled the engineering surveys before I started work because I knew the intersection was tricky. I stayed well within the county's boundaries." Margaret nodded. "The HOA attorney, Gerald Hampton, called the county surveyor's office yesterday. Tom confirmed that your work was entirely within the county right of way." Gerald seemed satisfied with that answer, but apparently the HOA board is not. "Patricia Anderson has decided this is her hill to die on," I said. "Apparently," Margaret agreed. "She's also filed a complaint with the Michigan Public Service Commission, claiming that you damaged underground utilities." "I didn't damage anything," I said. "I was moving snow, not excavating." "The bucket never touched the ground hard enough to damage buried utilities, and we have locate marks for all utilities in that area anyway. I specifically avoided them." "I believe you," Margaret said, "but I need you to document everything. Write up a detailed incident report. Include all your GPS data, photos, communications, everything. The Board of Commissioners is going to have questions about this at next month's meeting because Patricia Anderson has apparently contacted several commissioners directly." "She's got connections," I said, remembering her threat from the roadside. "Her husband is a major donor to several commissioners' campaigns," Margaret said, "which means this is going to be political, not just administrative. So I need you to have an airtight case that you followed every rule, every procedure, and every regulation." I spent the rest of that day, and most of the next compiling my documentation. Rachel helped me put together a comprehensive report that included GPS tracking data showing my excavator's exact movements, time-stamped photos showing the before and after conditions, copies of the weather emergency declaration that authorized extended snow removal operations, engineering surveys showing the county right-of-way boundaries, and statements from Officer Chen confirming that I had stayed within county property. The following week, I received a letter from the Meadowbrook Estates HOA board demanding that I appear at their next board meeting to answer questions about the incident. The letter was formal and officious, written on HOA letterhead, and signed by Patricia as president. I called Gerald Hampton. "I got a letter demanding I appear at an HOA board meeting." "What's this about?" Gerald sighed audibly. "Patricia wants to put you on trial in front of the HOA membership. I advised against it, but I'm just the attorney. The board votes, and Patricia controls the board." "I don't have to attend an HOA meeting," I pointed out. "I'm not a member of the association." "You don't," Gerald agreed, "but Patricia is threatening to escalate this further if you don't. She's talking about filing a lawsuit against the county, and she's been in contact with some state representatives about introducing legislation to require county road commissions to notify HOAs before conducting work near subdivisions." I rubbed my temples. "This is insane." "I cleared snow from a county road during a blizzard. That's literally my job." "I know," Gerald said, "but Patricia sees this as a matter of principle. She believes the HOA has authority over everything that happens in or near the subdivision, and your actions challenged that authority. She can't let it go because it makes her look weak to the other board members and the residents. So I'm supposed to show up and let her grandstand." "I'm suggesting that if you show up, present your facts calmly and professionally, and let the residents see that you're reasonable and Patricia is not. This might actually resolve in your favor," Gerald said. The majority of Meadowbrook Estates residents were grateful that you cleared the snow. They know Patricia is being ridiculous. If you give them a chance to see the contrast between your professionalism and her hysteria, it might turn the HOA board against her. It was decent political advice, and I was tempted to take it. But I also did not want to set a precedent that the county road commissioner had to answer to every HOA in Oakland County. I called Margaret Willis and explained the situation. She thought about it for a moment. "Go to the meeting," she finally said. "But go as a courtesy, not because you're required to. Make it clear that you're there voluntarily to provide information to concerned residents, not because the HOA has any authority over you. Present your facts, answer reasonable questions, and don't let Patricia bait you into an argument." "You really think this is necessary?" I asked. "I think Patricia Anderson is going to be a problem until someone publicly demonstrates that she's wrong," Margaret said. "The commissioners are starting to hear from Meadowbrook Estates residents, both supporting and opposing Patricia's complaint. This has become political. If you can deflate the situation by showing up and being reasonable, it's worth the time." The HOA meeting was scheduled for the following Thursday evening at the Meadowbrook Estates clubhouse. I arrived 15 minutes early to find the parking lot already full and residents streaming into the building. Apparently, word had spread that this was going to be quite the spectacle. The clubhouse was a nice facility, clearly built with generous HOA dues. It had a large meeting room with a stage at one end, rows of folding chairs filling the space, and the kind of bland, inspirational artwork on the walls that seemed to be required in all HOA common areas. Patricia and the other board members were already seated at a long table on the stage. Patricia was in the center, with Deborah the treasurer on her right and 3 other board members I did not recognize on her left. Gerald the attorney sat at a smaller table off to the side, looking like he would rather be anywhere else. I found a seat toward the back. Rachel had offered to come with me for support, but I had declined. This was not an official county function, and I did not want to give Patricia the satisfaction of thinking this was important enough to bring staff. The room filled quickly. I estimated about 150 people had showed up, which was apparently an unusually large turnout for an HOA meeting. I overheard conversations around me and quickly realized that the community was split. Some residents were angry with me for supposedly damaging HOA property and violating HOA rules. Others were angry with Patricia for making a big deal out of routine snow removal. Patricia called the meeting to order at 7 o'clock sharp. She went through the standard HOA meeting procedures, approving minutes from the previous meeting, taking a treasurer's report from Deborah, and addressing several routine maintenance issues. Then she got to what everyone was really there for. Item 7 on tonight's agenda is the unauthorized county work incident from February 7th, Patricia announced, her voice taking on that tone of grave importance that suggested she was about to address a constitutional crisis. As most of you are aware, a county employee brought heavy construction equipment into our community without HOA authorization and conducted work that damaged HOA property, violated multiple community rules, and endangered residents. There were murmurs from the audience, both supportive and skeptical. I've invited County Road Commissioner Xavier Barrett to attend tonight's meeting to answer questions about this incident, Patricia continued. Commissioner Barrett, would you please come forward? I stood and made my way to the front of the room. Patricia gestured to a single folding chair that had been placed in front of the board table, positioned so I would have to look up at the board members while the audience looked at my back. It was clearly designed to be uncomfortable and intimidating. I moved the chair so it was angled toward both the board and the audience, then sat down. Patricia did not like that, but she could hardly complain about it without looking petty. Commissioner Barrett, can you explain why you brought an excavator into Meadowbrook Estates on February 7th without obtaining proper authorization from the HOA board? I cleared a county road during a snow emergency, I said simply. County Road 47 is a public road maintained by Oakland County. On the morning of February 7th, I was clearing a major snowdrift that had formed at the intersection of County Road 47 and Meadowbrook Drive. That drift was blocking the intersection and creating a safety hazard. I cleared it as part of coordinated snow removal operations across Oakland County. You did more than clear the intersection, Patricia countered. You brought a massive excavator into our community entrance area. You worked during hours that violated our noise ordinance, and you damaged HOA property. I worked entirely within the county right-of-way, I responded. The area I cleared is county property, not HOA property. The county surveyor's office has confirmed the boundaries. I damaged no HOA property because I never worked on HOA property. A man in the audience raised his hand. Can someone explain what a county right-of-way is? I don't understand what that means. Gerald stood up. A right-of-way is the area of land where a road is located, plus additional space on either side for maintenance, utilities, and safety purposes. For County Road 47, the right-of-way extends 15 feet from the center line in each direction. That entire 30-foot wide strip is county property, even where it passes through private subdivisions. Property owners own the land underneath the right-of-way, but the county has the legal right to use that space for road maintenance. So the county owns part of our entrance. A woman asked, sounding confused. The county has the right to maintain that space, Gerald clarified. You still own the land, but the county has what's called an easement that allows them to maintain the road and the area immediately around it. Patricia looked annoyed at Gerald for being helpful. The point is that Commissioner Barrett should have notified the HOA board before conducting work in our community. We have standards and procedures for exactly this reason. With respect, Mrs. Anderson, the county doesn't require permission from homeowners associations to maintain county roads, I said. That's established law. If the county had to get approval from every HOA before plowing snow or fixing potholes or repairing storm damage on county roads, we would never be able to respond to emergencies effectively. This wasn't an emergency, Patricia insisted. It was snow. We get snow every winter. You could have waited until normal business hours and contacted the board for approval. It was a snow emergency, I corrected. The county had declared a snow emergency due to the blizzard. More than 2 feet of snow had fallen overnight, and major drifts were blocking roads throughout Oakland County. The drift at your intersection was 6 feet high and completely blocking access to Meadowbrook Estates. That's absolutely an emergency situation. A man in the front row stood up. I'm Tom Jennings, and I live on Meadowbrook Drive. Commissioner Barrett, I want to thank you for clearing that snow. I work at Beaumont Hospital in Royal Oak, and I had to be at work for the morning shift. There's no way I could have gotten through that drift. You literally made it possible for me to get to work. Several people applauded. Patricia's expression tightened. Another resident stood. I'm Helen Martinez. I also want to thank you, Commissioner. My mother lives with me and she's on oxygen. I was worried about what would happen if we needed emergency medical access. That snow pile was completely blocking the entrance. You did the right thing. More applause. Patricia banged a gavel on the table. Please hold your comments until the board has finished questioning Commissioner Barrett. But the floodgates had opened. Another resident stood without being called on. I'm Frank Wilson, and I think this whole thing is ridiculous. The commissioner cleared snow from a county road during a blizzard. That's his job. Why are we wasting time on this? Patricia's face was turning red. Mr. Wilson, this is about the principle of HOA authority. If we let county employees ignore our rules, what's to stop any contractor or utility company from doing whatever they want in our community? County employees have to follow county rules, not HOA rules, someone called out from the back. That's the whole point of having a county government. The meeting was rapidly spiraling away from Patricia's control. Deborah leaned over and whispered something to her. Patricia nodded and banged the gavel again. I have documentation that Commissioner Barrett damaged HOA property, Patricia announced, pulling out a folder. Photographs showing torn-up landscaping, damaged irrigation systems, and snow piled in areas where it will cause drainage problems when it melts. She started passing around photographs. When they reached me, I looked at them carefully. They showed areas that I had definitely not worked on. The photos included damaged bushes and torn-up sod that were nowhere near the intersection I had cleared. Mrs. Anderson, these photos are not of areas where I worked, I said clearly. I can show you GPS data from my excavator that proves I never went near these locations. Are you calling me a liar? Patricia demanded. I'm saying these photos don't show damage I caused, I replied evenly. I documented my work extensively. I have photos showing the condition of the county right-of-way before and after I worked. None of my photos show any of this damage. Gerald stood up again. Patricia, where exactly were these photos taken? Patricia looked flustered. In the entrance area where Commissioner Barrett was working. Can you identify the specific locations? Gerald asked. There in the general area, Patricia said defensively. A woman in the audience stood up. I'm Jennifer Scott, and I live at the corner lot right at the entrance. Those photos show damage to my bushes, but that damage happened back in December when a snowplow hit them. It has nothing to do with what the commissioner did in February. The room erupted in conversation. Patricia banged her gavel repeatedly, but she had lost control of the meeting. Order, Patricia shouted. I am the board president and I will have order. Gerald stood and walked over to Patricia, speaking quietly but urgently. I could not hear what he was saying, but Patricia's expression suggested she was not happy about it. Finally, Gerald turned to address the room. I think there's been some confusion about what damage, if any, was caused by the county's snow removal work. I'm going to recommend that the board table this matter until we can conduct a thorough investigation with proper documentation. I don't accept that recommendation, Patricia said immediately. The board needs to vote on a formal complaint against the county and Commissioner Barrett tonight. Patricia, I'm advising you as HOA legal counsel that you don't have sufficient evidence to support such a complaint, Gerald said, still speaking quietly but firmly. If the HOA files a frivolous complaint against the county could potentially countersue for harassment and legal fees. That would cost the HOA, meaning it would cost every resident here, tens of thousands of dollars at minimum. Patricia looked around at the other board members. Deborah was shaking her head. The other 3 board members were looking at each other uncomfortably, clearly not wanting to be part of whatever Patricia was planning. I move that we file a formal complaint with the County Board of Commissioners, Patricia said. I need a second to that motion, Deborah said mechanically, following proper procedure. Silence. None of the other board members spoke. I need a second, Patricia repeated, her voice rising. More silence. Finally, one of the board members I did not know spoke up. Patricia, I don't think we should move forward with this. From what I'm hearing, the commissioner did his job appropriately, and the residents are happy that the snow was cleared. I don't see the benefit in pursuing this further. The benefit is protecting HOA authority, Patricia insisted. The HOA doesn't have authority over county roads, the board member replied. Mr. Hampton has been pretty clear about that. Patricia looked at each board member in turn, clearly looking for support. She found none. Her face went through several interesting color changes. Fine, she finally said. Then I'm calling for a vote on my leadership. If the board doesn't support me on matters of principle like this, then perhaps you need a new president. That was probably not the strategic move Patricia thought it was. Deborah immediately said, I move that we hold a vote of no confidence in the current HOA president. I second that motion, another board member said quickly. Patricia looked shocked. You can't do that. It's in the HOA bylaws, Gerald said, and I could hear the satisfaction in his voice. Any board member can call for a vote of no confidence in an officer. If a majority of the board votes yes, that officer is removed from their position. The vote was 4-1, with only Patricia voting against. She stood up, grabbed her folder, and stormed out of the clubhouse. The room erupted in applause. Deborah took over as acting president. She looked at me with an apologetic expression. Commissioner Barrett, on behalf of the Meadowbrook Estates HOA Board, I want to apologize for wasting your time and for any inconvenience this situation has caused. We appreciate the work you did clearing the snow from our intersection, and we recognize that you were operating within your authority as County Road Commissioner. I stood and nodded. Thank you. I appreciate that. For what it's worth, I'm always happy to coordinate with HOA boards when there's going to be major work in their area, but I can't promise advance notice for emergency operations like snow removal during a blizzard. That's completely reasonable, Deborah said. We'll make sure the board understands the difference between routine maintenance and emergency operations going forward. I stayed for a few more minutes, answering questions from residents about how county road maintenance worked and what they could expect in terms of snow removal, pothole repairs, and other services. Most people were friendly and appreciative. A few seemed disappointed that there had not been more drama. As I was leaving, Gerald Hampton caught up with me in the parking lot. Commissioner Barrett, I want to apologize for this entire situation. I advised Patricia from the beginning that she didn't have a case, but she was determined to push forward. Not your fault, I said. You gave good advice. She chose not to take it. For what it's worth, she's been looking for a fight with the county for a while, Gerald said. She's been president for 3 years, and she's developed a very expansive view of HOA authority. This was about power and control more than it was about snow removal. I figured, I said. Thanks for your help tonight. You could have just let the HOA dig themselves into a legal hole, but you actually tried to protect them from their own bad decisions. Gerald shrugged. I take my professional responsibilities seriously, even when clients don't want to hear my advice. Besides, most of the Meadowbrook Estates residents are decent people who don't deserve to have their HOA dues wasted on frivolous legal fights. I drove home that night feeling pretty good about how things had turned out. The situation had been absurd from the start, but at least it had reached a reasonable conclusion. Patricia was out as HOA president. The board had formally acknowledged that I had acted appropriately, and the residents seemed satisfied. I should have known it was not over. 2 weeks later, I was in a meeting with the County Board of Commissioners when my phone buzzed with an urgent text from Rachel. News crews at your office. Patricia Anderson claiming county conspiracy and corruption. I excused myself from the meeting and headed back to my office. Sure enough, there were 3 news vans in the parking lot and reporters clustered around the entrance to the Road Commission building. Rachel was standing just inside the doors, looking stressed. "What's going on?" I asked as I pushed through the reporters without commenting. "Patricia Anderson called a press conference," Rachel said. "She's claiming that you abused your power as road commissioner to retaliate against her for questioning your authority, and that you pressured the HOA board to remove her from office." "That's insane," I said. "I didn't pressure anyone. I answered questions at an HOA meeting, and the board made their own decision." "I know that, and you know that, but Patricia is telling the media that you threatened the HOA with lawsuits and used your political connections to force her out," Rachel said. "She's outside right now giving interviews." I looked out the window and saw Patricia standing in front of the building, surrounded by reporters and camera crews. She was wearing a dark suit and had clearly prepared for this media appearance. She looked professional and credible, which was dangerous. I called Margaret Willis to give her a heads up. She had already heard about the press conference and was not happy. "This is a problem," Margaret said bluntly. "It doesn't matter that Patricia's accusations are false. Once something is on the news, it takes on a life of its own. We need to respond quickly and clearly." "What do you want me to do?" I asked. "Hold your own press conference this afternoon. Present the facts, show your documentation, and make it clear that Patricia is spreading false information. I'll have the county communications director coordinate with you on messaging." The county communications director, Amanda Torres, arrived at my office within 20 minutes. She brought a media relations specialist and started preparing me for the press conference. We went through all my documentation, crafted clear talking points, and practiced responses to potential hostile questions. At 2 o'clock that afternoon, I stood in front of the county building with Amanda beside me and faced the assembled media. I gave a brief statement explaining exactly what had happened, from the emergency snow removal operation to the HOA meeting to Patricia's removal by her own board. "Mrs. Anderson has made serious allegations about abuse of power and retaliation," I said. "These allegations are completely false. I attended the HOA meeting at the invitation of the board. I answered questions about my work, and I had no involvement whatsoever in the board's decision to remove Mrs. Anderson from office. That was a decision made by HOA board members based on their own judgment about what was best for their community." I took questions from reporters. Most of them were straightforward questions about the timeline of events and the details of the snow removal work. Then a reporter from a Detroit television station asked, "Mrs. Anderson claims you threatened the HOA with a lawsuit if they pursued a complaint against you. Is that true?" "No, that's not true," I said firmly. The HOA attorney, Gerald Hampton, mentioned during the meeting that if the HOA filed what he considered to be a frivolous complaint, the county could potentially countersue. But that was the attorney protecting his client from a bad legal decision, not me making threats. I never threatened anyone. Another reporter asked, "Do you think Mrs. Anderson's gender played a role in this situation? She's suggesting that as a male county official, you were dismissive of her legitimate concerns." I had been expecting that question. This situation has nothing to do with gender. It has to do with jurisdiction and authority. The county has the legal right and responsibility to maintain county roads. That includes emergency snow removal during blizzards. Mrs. Anderson disagreed with that, which is her right, but her disagreement doesn't change the law. If Mrs. Anderson had been Mr. Anderson, my response would have been exactly the same. The questions continued for about 30 minutes. Amanda finally stepped in and ended the press conference, citing my need to get back to work on actual road maintenance issues. The news coverage that evening was mixed. Some outlets presented it as a straightforward story about an HOA overstepping its authority. Others played up the conflict angle, presenting it as a he said, she said situation between a powerful county official and a concerned citizen. A few outlets unfortunately gave credence to Patricia's claims of retaliation and abuse of power. The next morning, I woke up to find that the story had spread beyond local news. Someone had posted video of both press conferences on social media, and it had gone viral. The internet, in its infinite wisdom, had turned the situation into a meme. I was variously being portrayed as either a heroic public servant standing up to an out-of-control HOA Karen, or as an arrogant government bureaucrat crushing citizen dissent. My phone was ringing constantly with interview requests from regional and national media outlets. Margaret called an emergency meeting with me, Amanda, and the county attorney, Lawrence Mitchell. "This has gotten out of control," Margaret said. "We need to figure out how to shut this down before it damages the county's reputation." "Patricia Anderson is still giving interviews," Amanda reported. "She was on a Detroit morning show this morning, and she's scheduled to appear on a national cable news show tonight. She's positioning herself as a whistleblower exposing corruption in local government." Lawrence had been reviewing all the documentation I had provided. "From a legal standpoint, Commissioner Barrett is completely in the clear. He followed every regulation, stayed within his authority, and documented everything properly. If Patricia Anderson continues to make false allegations, we could potentially file a defamation suit." "That would just escalate things further," Margaret said. "We'd be playing into her narrative about government retaliation." "So what do?" I asked. "Just let her keep spreading lies. We focus on the facts," Amanda said. "We provide documentation to any media outlet that asks for it. We show the GPS data, the photos, the engineering surveys, all of it. We let the evidence speak for itself." Over the next few days, I did exactly that. I gave copies of all my documentation to reporters who requested it. I patiently explained county road maintenance procedures to anyone who would listen. I stayed calm and professional, even when Patricia appeared on television making increasingly wild accusations about corruption, abuse of power, and government conspiracies. The tide started to turn when Gerald Hampton, the HOA attorney, gave an interview to a Detroit newspaper. He confirmed that I had stayed within the county right-of-way, that I had not threatened anyone, and that the HOA board had removed Patricia on their own initiative because they disagreed with her handling of the situation. Commissioner Barrett acted professionally and appropriately throughout this entire incident, Gerald was quoted as saying. Mrs. Anderson's decision to turn this into a media circus and make false allegations is unfortunate and does a disservice to the residents of Meadowbrook Estates. Several Meadowbrook Estates residents also started speaking out, confirming that they were grateful for the snow removal work and that they supported the board's decision to remove Patricia. Tom Jennings, the hospital worker who had thanked me at the HOA meeting, did an interview explaining that my snow removal work had allowed him to get to his job caring for patients. The national media interest faded quickly once it became clear that this was not actually a story about government corruption, but rather about an HOA president who had overstepped her authority and was now trying to save face. Patricia's 15 minutes of fame ended, and life started returning to normal. Then, about 3 weeks after the initial incident, things took an unexpected turn. The Oakland County Sheriff's Department called my office requesting copies of all my documentation related to the Meadowbrook Estates incident. When I asked why, the detective I spoke with was vague, saying only that it was related to an ongoing investigation. I called Lawrence Mitchell, the county attorney. "Do you know what this is about?" "I got a call this morning from the prosecutor's office," Lawrence said. "Apparently they're investigating potential fraud related to HOA finances at Meadowbrook Estates. They wouldn't give me details, but they mentioned your name as a witness." I provided the sheriff's department with copies of everything I had. 2 days later, Detective Sarah Morrison called and asked if I would come in for an interview. I brought Lawrence with me. Detective Morrison was a woman in her 40s with the kind of direct manner that suggested she did not waste time on nonsense. "Commissioner Barrett, thank you for coming in. I want to ask you about the photographs that Patricia Anderson presented at the HOA meeting, the ones showing supposed damage to landscaping." "Those photos didn't show damage I caused," I said. "I documented my work extensively, and none of my photos show that kind of damage." "I believe you," Detective Morrison said. "We've reviewed your documentation, and it's clear you stayed within the county right-of-way and didn't damage HOA property. What interests us is that Mrs. Anderson submitted a claim to the HOA insurance company for $10,000 in damages to repair that landscaping. She provided those same photographs as evidence." I stared at her. "But that damage had nothing to do with my work." "One of the residents at the meeting said the damage happened back in December from a different plow." "Exactly," Detective Morrison said. "Which means Mrs. Anderson filed a fraudulent insurance claim. That's a felony. But it gets more interesting. When we started looking into HOA finances, we found several other questionable insurance claims over the past 2 years, all filed by Mrs. Anderson, all for damage that either didn't exist or wasn't as extensive as claimed. The insurance payouts went to the HOA account, but then the money was transferred to accounts controlled by Mrs. Anderson for supposed repairs that were never completed." "How much money are we talking about?" Lawrence asked. "About $60,000 over 2 years, Detective Morrison said. "We're still tracking down all the transactions, but it looks like Mrs. Anderson has been systematically defrauding the HOA insurance company and embezzling funds from the HOA." I sat back in my chair, processing this information. So when I cleared that snow and she tried to blame me for damage, she was actually setting up another insurance fraud scheme. "That's what it looks like," Detective Morrison confirmed. "Your documentation actually helped us prove fraud because it shows conclusively that you didn't cause the damage she claimed. If you had caused some damage, even minor damage, it would have muddied the waters. But since you didn't damage anything, and we can prove that, her insurance claim is clearly fraudulent." "What happens now?" I asked. "We're preparing to arrest Mrs. Anderson on charges of insurance fraud and embezzlement," Detective Morrison said. "We wanted to interview you first to make sure we had the full picture. Your testimony will probably be needed at trial." Patricia Anderson was arrested the following week. The news coverage was extensive, especially since she had so recently been in the media making accusations against me. The irony was not lost on anyone. The Oakland County Prosecutor's Office charged Patricia with multiple counts of insurance fraud and embezzlement. The case was straightforward because she had left a clear paper trail of fraudulent claims and financial transfers. Her attorney tried to negotiate a plea deal, but the prosecutor's office was not inclined to be generous given Patricia's recent media campaign making false accusations against county officials. The case went to trial 4 months later. I testified about the snow removal incident and provided all my documentation. Several other Meadowbrook Estates residents testified about Patricia's behavior as HOA president and the various questionable expenses and repairs that had been billed to the HOA over the years. The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours before returning guilty verdicts on all counts. The judge sentenced Patricia to 2 years in prison and ordered her to pay full restitution to the HOA and the insurance company, plus additional fines. In her statement before sentencing, Patricia tried one last time to claim she was being persecuted for standing up to government overreach. The judge was not impressed. "Mrs. Anderson, you committed fraud and embezzlement. You stole money from your neighbors who trusted you to manage their HOA responsibly. And when you were caught, you tried to deflect blame by making false accusations against a county official who was simply doing his job. Your actions show a pattern of dishonesty and a refusal to accept responsibility. The sentence of this court stands." The Meadowbrook Estates HOA underwent significant changes after Patricia's arrest. Deborah served as interim president and oversaw an audit of all HOA finances. The audit revealed additional financial irregularities beyond what the prosecutor had charged. The HOA had to raise dues temporarily to cover the losses from Patricia's embezzlement, while they waited for the restitution payments. Gerald Hampton helped the HOA implement new financial controls, including requiring 2 board members to approve all expenses over $500 and mandatory annual audits by an independent accountant. The HOA also revised their bylaws to clarify the limits of HOA authority and specifically acknowledge that county, state, and federal agencies don't require HOA permission to conduct necessary work within their jurisdictions. Several residents reached out to me personally to apologize for the entire situation and to thank me again for the snow removal work. I appreciated the sentiment, though I pointed out that none of them had anything to apologize for. They had not committed fraud or made false accusations. They had simply been members of an HOA that happened to have a corrupt president. The story had one final twist several months after Patricia's sentencing. I was at a county roads conference in Lansing when I got a call from Tom Jennings, the Meadowbrook Estates resident who worked at Beaumont Hospital. "Commissioner Barrett, I wanted to let you know that the HOA board voted last night to name the entrance area at County Road 47 and Meadowbrook Drive the Barrett Gateway in recognition of your service to the community," Tom said. I was touched but also a bit concerned. "That's very kind, but it's county property. The HOA can't actually name it." "We know," Tom said, laughing. "That's why we're asking for your permission and the county's permission. We want to install a tasteful sign thanking the Oakland County Road Commission for maintaining our roads." We learned our lesson about respecting jurisdiction. I talked to Margaret Willis, and she agreed that it was a nice gesture. The county approved the sign, and 2 months later I attended a small ceremony at Meadowbrook Estates where the new sign was unveiled. It read, "Meadowbrook Estates thanks the Oakland County Road Commission for keeping our community safe and accessible." Standing there in the bright sunshine, watching residents celebrate a sign thanking the county for doing basic road maintenance, I reflected on how absurd the entire situation had been. I had done my job, cleared snow during a blizzard, and somehow ended up in a media firestorm that culminated in criminal charges against an HOA president who had been using the organization as her personal piggy bank. But it had ended well. Patricia was in prison serving her sentence. The HOA had reformed its practices and was being managed responsibly. The residents were happy, and I had learned an important lesson about documentation. I now kept even more detailed records of all road maintenance work, not because I expected every HOA to accuse me of imaginary damages, but because the one time it had happened, my documentation had been the difference between a minor headache and a major problem. The snow kept falling that winter and the next, and I kept clearing it from county roads throughout Oakland County. I got thank you notes from residents, complaints about snow being piled in inconvenient locations, and the occasional question about maintenance schedules. But I never again had an HOA president try to have me arrested for doing my job. The story became something of a legend in local government circles. At conferences and training sessions, other county road commissioners and public works directors would come up to me and share their own HOA horror stories. Apparently, I was far from the only public official who had dealt with HOA boards that did not understand the limits of their authority. I always told them the same thing. Document everything, stay professional, know your jurisdiction, and remember that most residents just want their roads maintained and their snow cleared. The Patricia Andersons of the world are rare, and when they do show up, they usually end up destroying themselves. As for the excavator that started the whole mess, it continued to serve me well for years afterward, clearing snow, moving earth, and maintaining county roads throughout Oakland County. Every time I climbed into the cab and fired up the engine, I thought about that February morning when Patricia Anderson had stood in the middle of County Road 47 with her phone pressed to her ear, absolutely certain that she had caught me doing something wrong. She had been so sure of her authority, so confident that HOA rules superseded county regulations, so convinced that she could intimidate a county official into backing down. And she had been wrong about all of it. The excavator was just a piece of equipment, a tool for moving snow and maintaining roads. But to Patricia, it had represented a challenge to her power, a threat to her authority, an invasion of her territory. And rather than admit she had been wrong about the boundaries of that territory, she had doubled down, made false accusations, and ultimately destroyed her own life. I felt sorry for her sometimes in an abstract way. She could have simply accepted that county roads were county jurisdiction, apologized for the misunderstanding, and moved on with her life. Instead, she had chosen to fight, to lie, to cheat, and to steal. And she had paid the price for those choices. The residents of Meadowbrook Estates had learned something too. They had learned that HOA boards have real power and real responsibility, and that they need to pay attention to what board members are doing with their money and their authority. After Patricia's arrest, attendance at HOA meetings increased dramatically. Residents asked questions, demanded transparency, and held board members accountable. The HOA became healthier and more democratic as a result. I continued serving as Oakland County Road Commissioner for many years after the Patricia Anderson incident. I worked with dozens of HOAs across the county, and the vast majority of those interactions were positive and professional. Most HOA boards understood their role and respected the county's jurisdiction. The few that did not usually came around after a polite explanation and a reference to the relevant laws and regulations. I never forgot the lessons of that February morning, though. I remembered that doing your job correctly and professionally is not always enough. You also need to document what you do, stand firm on matters of law and jurisdiction, and be willing to defend yourself against false accusations. And sometimes, if you are lucky, the truth comes out and justice prevails. The snow kept falling, the excavator kept running, and the road stayed clear. That was all that really mattered in the end.